Hello, everyone. Happy spring. Welcome to my February conversation with Rach Hunt from Ariel Canvas. This year, we are looking at my 2024 essays, taking them one by one, deconstructing them. She's been gracious enough to write a response to them, and then we're having conversations about them. This month, we are talking about practical philosophy. What are philosophies of the body? What are philosophies of teaching? How can both of these things be noticed or integrated into our movement teaching practices? It was a great, really interesting conversation. I hope you enjoy it. If you want to read the essays, they are in the email or in the links at the top of the email. My essay first, I've edited it from 2024. I'm a much better writer now because I've been practicing so much. Rach wrote a beautiful response that you can also read in the newsletter email. And you can just listen to this conversation if you want. I am having a happy and very busy spring. I just got back from a circus research conference in Brazil, and I'm feeling very inspired to both think about how we practice movement and circus and begin to apply those things in my own practice as a mover and as a thinker and as a writer and as a circus coach. So I hope you feel the same. I hope you enjoy the conversation, and I will see you again at the end of March.
Is that okay? That quality looks okay?
Yeah, looks great. I could hear you talk. I could see you just fine. The Night Manager. I'm supposed to watch The Night Manager. What is The Night Manager?
Yes, The Night Manager. And it's got Hugh Laurie in it playing an actual villain. The second season is set in Colombia, and it's do you know Olivia Colman? Do you know any of those English?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's got the guy, his name is just completely left my head now, but it's got the guy who plays Loki in the Avengers, Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah.
So it's got him. Oh. It's got him playing the main protagonist, and it's the books become a series, so it's based on a book. Yeah.
Right. The Night Manager. It sounds familiar. I'll bet it's familiar because Jefferson has watched it. My husband watches like everything religiously, in a good way. Okay, so maybe I'll begin speaking in a way that I feel like I could salvage from the recording. So Rach and I are here, and we're going to chat about our February essays. And our February essays this month, mine was from 2024, and my 2024 essay was really all over the place. And so I went through and I made a bit of a revision, and I sent it to Rach, and she gave me some great feedback, and then she sent me one, and then I gave her some great feedback, and blah, 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 blah. And now we have two great essays. And I think the thing that both of these essays are centering around is the ways in which philosophy or critical thinking actually come into play in our teaching. How do we take thoughts or philosophies or ethical considerations, and instead of only talking about them in, like teacher trainings, or only talking about them in writings, or only thinking about them for ourselves, or only posting about them on Instagram, like how do we translate down different ethical considerations or different philosophies into actual behavioral changes like in our teaching? Because I think it's quite easy, I think, especially in the like era of Instagram, to sort of like have a cool sounding soundbite around what your teaching is or how you teach. But it's much trickier to like actually in an everyday way enact these philosophies or these kind of ethics in your teaching, because you're faced constantly with like little edge cases, like, well, what about with this student? What about with this student? What about with this person who drives me crazy? What about with this person who, like makes me feel like they want to run my class? Like, how do we play out our ideas, our philosophies into our teaching? There's the big idea of these essays. Does that ring any bells for you, Miss Rachel Hunt?
It certainly does. And actually, the first like practical example I can think of right now is how I actually felt when you sent me your feedback and I sent you my feedback. I was like, oh, wow, somebody who says they're open to feedback who actually is in practice, because this is what it can look like. My essay is stronger for your responses. Your essay, your revised essay is stronger, hopefully from my feedback. And that's something that people say a lot. Like, I'm open to feedback, but only if it's positive. And like, I think that's a great example, right, of taking something philosophical, which is easy to say, like, oh, no, I'm open to criticism, or I'm open-minded, which I used to say all the time, and I very much wasn't. And so, yeah, it was a nice experience to actually get your feedback and go, thank you. My letter is better for your response.
Yeah. And vice versa. And I feel like there's a moment in that, which is always this kind of like, for me, the uncomfortable moment of like somebody asks for feedback, and you always kind of, the first time you're giving feedback, let's step this into a movement teaching context, right? So I've just watched someone's student showcase presentation, right? And they're like, oh, what did you think? If I was to give another example, I also work enough as a producer or as a circus producer that people invite me to see their shows. And after the show, they'll come out, like covered in sweat and glitter and be like, oh, Adam, what did you think of our show? Right. And I'm like, this is a
With the
trap.
show. It happened.
Like, this is not the moment in which you actually want to hear any sort of real feedback from me. If you're actually, and this is after 20 years of doing circus and doing things, I have learned to say, like, okay, in the moment right after a show, or in the moment right after the student runs the piece, or whenever, if somebody's even just working on a deck, there is a moment for kind of like, wow, good job, you did great, and and I am pleased and impressed and proud of you. Like the first moment there what they're really looking for is kind of like I just put in a lot of effort. Is that effort meaningful to you? And it's like, yeah, man, that effort is totally meaningful to me. High five. And the moment when you offer the first bit of real feedback, of critical feedback, of here are the things that you could change, here are the things that you could work on, is a really interesting moment. Or even the first moment that you ask a question is a really interesting moment, because you can see immediately whether or not you've picked the right time or used the right language to offer someone feedback that they can hear and absorb. What's your experience with that, with the timing of feedback? That's not really in either of our essays, but I think it's a fun thing to think about.
No, this is great. I love this kind of topic in general. I've had some moments where I've been devastated by immediate feedback. And that's the fault of me for asking for feedback and then being like, but I didn't sort of couch what feedback I wanted or what kind of feedback I was open to. But I've also done it. Like, I have a terrible poker face. So when I used to judge competitions, my face is doing that. All these things, like 17 emotions in one moment, and always judgment-based emotions, not like just, terrible, and so I've learned how to sort of mask that a little bit. But yeah, I find it really hard because, of course, if I think someone's asking the question, like, what did you think? It's like, oh, babe, where do you want me to start? Like, and I will go from the top of the show and tell them everything I thought, but that's not what they're asking. They're asking for, like, what did you think? You're like, you look like you were having a great time. I love that you started something and finished it. It happened. The show must go on. You did a great job dealing with that little costume malfunction. Like, you can always be demonstrative. Like, you can show that you consumed it all. You noticed things without introducing the negative. But I am always geared towards the negative. I'm a critical person. I notice what's missing. I'm looking for stuff that I disagree with. Like, that's just how I'm oriented. So now I think I deal with it a little better than when I was younger. But yeah, when people say, what do you think? It's the same as how are you? People are asking the question, but they don't want to know too deeply your judgments. So yeah, but I'm very honest with my actual feedback when it's in the right moment.
Well, and I think you bring up something which I think is really near and dear for both of us, which is like, we're both really rigorous people. Like, we like to really have students work on things. We like to really work on things ourselves. And we both have these kind of like ethics and judgments, both around how teaching can or should occur and around like what kind of like right action looks like in the world. And we both work in a sector where rigor has, for a really long time, been fairly synonymous with abuse. I'll just like say, like, to be rigorous with yourself means that either your coach is being very hard on you or you're being very hard on yourself. And you're maybe like being asked or asking yourself to ignore some sort of basic human kindness towards yourself. But like, this is where circus technique has emerged from for a very long time. And I think the question both of us ask, and both of us are asking in our essays a little bit, is this question of kind of like, okay, if we have an ethics of kind of kindness and care and student autonomy and discovery, and an interest in rigor and rigor of technique and rigor of research and rigor of like artistic ideas, like we both acknowledge that those things come into tension with each other sometimes. And like, what happens when we come into tension with those things, and how do we navigate that tension so that we can have rigor with rigor in a new way, a new kind of rigor? I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, one way of like phrasing that might be, my husband always talks about intellectual honesty or like being a robust person emotionally. It doesn't have to mean that you're resilient or that you can take someone else's rigorous, boundaries applied to you, but it just means that you are robust enough in your beliefs that you can withstand differing opinions of you. And I've always been a very sentimental, very sensitive person. But I think if you're looking for that in your own life, if you're looking like, oh no, I want to stand firm, I want my roots to go deep and wide, then you are also needing some resistance. Like plants, they get stronger with the wind. Their little legs, when it's wind, like when the wind is blowing hard, like they need the wind, they need the resistance. It's muscles, it's weights for them to develop the muscle to so they don't just fall over. So you need that resistance. If you're looking to become someone who is robust in what you believe, you need the pushback. But at the same time, I don't think anyone really seeks it out.
Yeah. And what does it mean to be how can we be movement teachers who supply the right amount of resistance at the right time in the right direction to sort of influence our students' growth in the ways, not necessarily just the growth of their technique, but also the growth of their processes, the growth of their self esteem, of the kind of robustness that lets a student confidently say, I don't need you to like my work, right? I'm interested in your thoughts, but at the end of the day, this is my work. This is my practice. And I'm going to like stay in it. I know that I'm rooted in a tradition. Some of my favorite moments with some of my younger students are the moments where I give them my feedback. And, it usually happens around like 15, 16, 17, where they test the boundary a little bit. I'll give them some feedback on a piece or on something. And they're like, yeah, thanks, Adam. I'm going to pass on that. Like I really want to keep it the way it is. And like, obviously I wouldn't be giving them the advice if I thought it was bad advice. So I'm like, well, that's, you're making a mistake because my advice is obviously the best advice. And obviously I'm telling you to do the greatest thing ever because all my opinions are correct. But I always really value that moment from young artists, especially, but also from older artists where it's like, no, actually, that's not what I'm aiming for here. That's not what I'm trying to do.
It's almost as if you get that moment of understanding or compassion. You can see through the question. It's like when someone's asking you what they thought or for your feedback, they're wanting you to go, did you love that as much as I love that for me? And that's why I love this kind of the more recent, I guess, last couple of years, this sentence of like, I love that for you. It's so empowering because yes, sometimes you're saying it a bit facetiously, but it is empowering to love something for someone and be like, not for me, but love that for you. And my mum's just started saying it and it's the actual best because it actually expresses this concept of like, all right, yep, there's resistance, there's tension here. I don't want you to be offended by me saying I didn't like this. But at the same time, the fact that you're pushing back and saying, yeah, I still like it enough, despite your expert feedback, I still like it enough for me to continue it. That is a moment of growth. Like, so yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. It's a cool moment. Let's pull some little moments out of our essays more specifically. Do you want to go first? Do you want to pull something out of mine and then I'll look for something in yours? Go for it.
Yes.
Oh, I'm so scared. I'm so scared.
No, honestly, in the first and the revised and the third revision of your essay, what I really liked is just this one sentence right at the start where you said, it's almost as if our critical thinking only extends as far as justifying our current teaching habits. Because it's a mic drop, but it's also just like a wake up moment, right? If you're ready to receive that as like, yep, I can own up to the fact that all my ideology and all of my intellectualizing or whatever only really matters so far as I can start to think about how I'm going to apply it, then that's a good space to be in when you're ready to like receive that and go, oh yeah, that could be me. He's talking about me. So I love that sentence. And I wanted to ask you, like, in return, like, I don't think you think this, but is this unique to circus, or does this apply to a lot of other areas?
Wow. Ooh, that's a good question. Um, so I'm going to answer the question the way I answer every question, which is I'm going to like cycle back a little bit. I was just at this circus research conference in Brazil, and it was a gathering of circus studios and researchers and teacher trainers from South America and from Europe. And so there was this guy from Spain, and we were having a conversation. And he was saying one of the major topics for the conference was, what is the role of university and formalized training in circus, either for students or for teachers or for research or whatever? What role does the university have in circus? And he was, I have to pause for a second because I lost it. Thank God
That's
for
right.
editing. No, 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 it's
Yeah.
going to come back.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and
It's fine.
what did he talk about?
So what did he think the role of the
Other arts.
university
Oh yeah,
was?
yeah, yeah. Other arts. Other arts. It was other arts. So it was this guy from Spain, and we were talking, and he was talking about how his theater and dance friends talk about there is no repertory in circus. In dance, a company will create a piece, and the piece will live on beyond the dancers who are dancing it. In theater, you create a play. The play has a script, and the script will become the sort of like blueprint for other productions of the play. And in circus, we are only building fireworks that we kind of like make a show, right, out of specific acts, and that a specific act goes the exception to this is probably the really big circuses, specifically Cirque du Soleil, who makes shows that are then in repertory. But even within those shows, the individual acts do change based on who's coming in. Like some of the solo or featured acts will change based on who's coming in. The overall gist of the show doesn't change. But you definitely don't see this down at the school level or the mid-range company level. We are creating shows that don't really go into repertoire for the most part. Of course, there are even some mid-level exceptions that I think of now that I'm thinking of it, right? Um, One of the interesting things that I think this has done for the circus ecosystem is it's made it really hard to build a body of critique. It's made it really hard to build a body of literature around circus, because you can't say, like the body of literature around Shakespeare or around critical kind of takes on individual productions of Shakespeare exists because the script is always there. Any academic can go look at the script and do research on the script. Any critic can go watch the production and take their knowledge of history and say, this production is taking these age-old themes and blah, 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 blah. And because of the nature of circus arts, this is much more difficult. And so I think we have historically a really fragile relationship, both pedagogically, both in teaching and in production, with critical thinking and with, I'll call it, dramaturgy for now, right? And I think the fragility of those relationships, or the resistance to those relationships, is both to do with circus's sort of inherent anti-elitist stance. At least in the United States, circus has always been the art form that was left out, the art form that was told it was for the lower classes, the art form that was told, like, you're not allowed in the theater. And so we have sort of proudly taken that up and gone, all right, good. That means theaters are elite. Like, we're not going to make work that aligns with dramaturgical ideas that exist in
And
academia about
yeah.
about what dance and theater are supposed to be. So there's both this resistance to the sort of elitism of critical thinking and a sort of like lack of a basis for what that critical thinking would slip onto, when it comes to teaching or when it comes to production. What can it grab onto is a harder question in circus, because there is no repertoire, because you have to grab onto either the individual artist or the family or the sort of history of the discipline. Um, so in answer to your question, do I think that the sort of tensions that I see in circus around critical thinking, or the tensions I see in circus around critical thinking in teaching, exist in other art forms? I don't think so. I actually think circus has a pretty unique relationship with philosophy and with critical thinking. It's not to say that the others don't have their own unique relationships. But I don't think this is like a universal thing. I think dancers, for example, have quite a different relationship with critical thinking than circus artists do. The dancers will think quite a lot about what is the body, what is the self, what does a gesture express. Um, there are entire bodies of dance built around just the thing. How do we embody these kind of thoughts and philosophies? And I don't know that that exists in the same way in circus. It does exist in some circus in some places, but certainly not in the same way that it does in dance. What do you think?
I think my question should have been more narrow. But I agree. I agree. In application to the other arts, the performing arts, education, other sort of adjacent areas to circus, and being like thinking of myself as a movement educator, yes, I do think that specifically circus has challenges that don't apply as much in other areas, other sports or other performing arts, or even other educational institutions. Like you're speaking about, the body of work of Shakespeare can be critically reduced to this school of thought of what he was doing, or this school of thought of did he actually write all of these plays, or so you can read commentaries, you can got a book at the moment, it's a compendium, a continuum of existentialist stuff, and I'm just like, I can just read what some random group of authors think of a bunch of other authors, and all their stuff is there to be looked at, to be revisited, to be reinterpreted. So I agree in that sense that circus is unique philosophically. And like your essay talks about dualism and monism as approaches to how we see the body. And if we're talking about teaching movement, that we are in fact then at least coming from some sort of idea or theory about what the body is and how it gets taught or how it learns movement. I think we do this all the time. The break between applied and theoretical is a human thing. But like your essay suggests, this is what I think is kind of closer than we think. This line between like what we think we believe and then what our actions actually demonstrate that we believe is actually a much thinner line. And so I like what you said in your original essay. You talked a little bit more about how we think of like, oh, intellectualism is just heady nonsense. It's just, head in the clouds, and it's all this kind of, pontification and stuff. Whereas, practical is practical, like what works in the trenches. I know they're much closer together because you can't really entertain one without having to think about the other. And the way that we do work practically always says something about what we actually think, believe, what we theorize, comes across in what we're applying. So that's why my essay sort of talks about or ends with the idea of action actually usually tells us what we believe more than our beliefs dictate our actions. That's where I'm at on this. So that's the sort of philosophical take. But yeah.
Yeah, no, that was one of the moments from your essay. If I'm going to do my turn and pull out the first thing, I had here. Yeah. Hold on, let me find it real quick.
It's at the end if you want to do it later, or if you're happy to edit it out whenever.
Yeah. Well, we'll just edit through all the little hiccups, but whatever. Yeah. This was the sentence towards the end that I was going to pull out. Was this bit that you write? I'm just going to do your whole last paragraph because I think it all stitches together really nicely here. How does the atmosphere of class change if I stop using this word or start asking a question? I'm reminded of what my first boss said to me when I was busy telling her all about what I believed. She said, "I don't care what you believe. I care what you do." A practical philosophy I have since aspired to. Challenging your beliefs is important, but looking honestly at your actions and letting them tell you what you really believe, well, that brings unavoidable self-growth. I think that is such like an astute and like poignant point that you make there, that being able to articulate your beliefs is one thing, but that the more useful exercise in a lot of ways, or the practically philosophical exercise in a lot of ways, is to actually look at what you actually do and let your actions tell you what you really believe instead of the other way around. And I thought that was a really interesting point that I actually wanted you to talk about more because it was really well articulated.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I mean, that environment and that that first boss really directed sort of my progress in this direction. And it might sound high-minded, like when I hear that back, it's a little cringy for me to hear that like I wrote that. Because straight away there's a judgment between what I'm saying and what I do. So this is the whole point. This is why the wrestling with an idea, that it produces this effect in us where we're just kind of like, okay, well, easy to say that, and I think, it actually can be not so terrifying an endeavor. It doesn't have to be, it can be quite neutral. You can just go, look at what you do, and then try to tease out from that what your beliefs might be, and without judging what your beliefs might be, right? So I could look at my day and I go, well, I get up and I always have 2 cups of black coffee. And then I wait ages until I'm like absolutely starving and practically having like a caffeine buzz where I need to eat. That's not something that a healthy person should probably do. She should probably get up and, I don't know, have half a liter of water, or she should go, but if I extrapolate from that, I'm not a healthy person or I'm addicted to caffeine. Like I can look at what I do without judgment and go, okay, yeah, that's because I believe I should get up and start my day the way I want, which is 2 cups of black coffee. And then I don't like to eat until I really want to eat, so you can look at what you do. And then from that, you can see your values. I guess values and beliefs sort of go hand in hand here. Because I know that my highest value is growth, which sounds so wanky, but I know it's true because I live my life as if I care the most about growth. So it can be kind of empowering as well, because you're like, oh, okay, my actions actually do tell me exactly what I value, exactly what I believe. And it can be super terrifying because your actions actually do tell you what you believe. But it's less exhausting than the reverse process. It's way less exhausting than trying to think, how can I apply this lofty ideal? How can we immediately make that happen in the real world? That's exhausting and fraught with danger and fraught with harm. We can do harm to our students. And I've learned that practically as well.
Yeah.
Trying to impose an ideal is, not easy.
Right. Try. Yeah. Well, and I think the two things exist in like kind of a process circle, like, oh no, a circle, oh no, a process. But like these two things really do work together, which is I have to observe what I'm actually doing when I teach. Am I actually taking time at the beginning of class to review material with my students? Am I actually taking time at the end of class to get feedback from my students? If I'm not actually doing both of those things, then I have to look at that and say to myself, well, why am I not doing those things? Maybe I am a person who actually does feel more social pressure than I'm willing to acknowledge. And this is where my sentence about like our critical thinking only extends so far as justifying our current teaching behaviors. Like, totally, I can use my brain to be like, no, the reason I'm doing it this way is because XYZ, 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 Like, I have all these reasons for doing things the way that I'm doing. My critical thinking can absolutely defend my current teaching practices. But what if it didn't? What if it didn't feel like it needed to? What if my current teaching practices were like, well, this is what I'm trying right now. And is it working? Like, it's kind of working. Like, it's working for these things, I'm in a teaching environment right now. The only teaching of kids that I'm doing right now is in an environment that I have very little experience teaching. I've been doing it for about a year, and I'm teaching in what is much more of a social circus than I've ever taught in before. And I am having to teach really differently than I'm used to teaching. And it is succeeding at some parts of what I want to succeed at, and it is not succeeding at other parts of what I want to be succeeding at, And I have all these philosophical justifications for why I couldn't possibly do it any differently than the way I'm doing it right now. But like, the truth is, it's not working for everything. It's working for parts of what I'm trying to accomplish. And it would be quite easy to let myself off the hook and say, well, it's okay, because no teaching is going to succeed at all of the parts, right? Yeah. And while I simultaneously believe that's true, I don't think it's possible to succeed at everything when you're teaching. I do really believe that. That doesn't mean I'm going to stop trying. Like, I can't use that as an excuse to be like, well, then I should stop changing how I teach. No, I'm going to keep changing how I teach because and this is my behavior. This is where my actions give away my real belief. I really do believe you can accomplish everything. with how you teach. I really do believe that you can accomplish like technical growth, great technique, high level achievement, and like personal growth for your students and kindness. Like I really do believe all these things are possible in one place through a teaching method. Like I really keep looking for that. I have not succeeded at it yet, but like that doesn't mean it can't be done. And there's a moment where like my actions really reveal my beliefs because I don't stop changing what I'm doing. Um,
Yeah,
really.
I would say that's probably one of the things when we first met, I really admired that about you. I was like, oh, here's someone who has fully embraced the notion that practices evolve. They are inherently evolving things, that sort of circular process orientated. Like, yeah, for me, I love it. But finding out what works is the purpose. Like it reminds me of that Stafford Beer quote. Yeah, what is it? The purpose of a system is what it does. Right. So
Yes.
not like,
Yeah.
oh, this system is designed to keep blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, no, no. The purpose of this system is what it's actually currently achieving. And
Yeah.
that I think is a tension that we're not really built to hold. Maybe, you and I have the personality that we love to engage with it because that tension kind of tickles us. But I think a lot of people kind of want to know that how do I become a good teacher? And I'm not exempt from this. Like I jump on bandwagons. As you know, if you've read my essay, I talk about like my fundamental upbringing. And it's easy to jump on a bandwagon, even with NLP. And through meeting you, I had to be careful not to suddenly go, right, I'm going to change everything about how I teach and start preaching this gospel of NLP. Because of course, like it's a process, it's evolving, it's unfolding, and you learn nothing from success, right? So like, yes, maybe I love that you're an idealist and you do believe that you can do everything. You can hit all those parameters with your teaching practice. But if you do ever reach success, it'll exist for a second, you'll enjoy it, and then some other variable will come in because otherwise you wouldn't be learning, right? And teaching is learning. There's really no difference between teaching and learning. They're kind of the same thing. It's just that you're in a different role in that environment for one moment. And my teachers are my students all the time. And after I sort of met you and kind of started implementing NLP stuff. And I remember you saying to me once, like, oh, you're really implementing it. Like you're off trying things, you're changing things,
You're
you're not
going for it.
submitting
Yeah,
one.
you went
Yeah,
for it.
you haven't submitted one homework assignment to me yet, but you're off in your teaching practice, doing it and trialing and failing and all of that. Because that's who I am. That's what I like. Again, obsessed with the growth. So
Yeah. Yeah. We're gonna do snake style. So you got to do a bit from my essay. I did one from yours. Now I'm gonna do one from yours again. And then we'll go back to mine. Because yours kind of came up organically, but I had another one that I wanted to pull out and ask you about. I'm gonna say that again because my computer dinged.
yeah, just
Yeah, I thought it was turned off, but it wasn't. So I'm gonna pull out another one of yours that I thought was really interesting. It was this one. Where you say, if I pay close attention to the kind of questions that students ask, I'm forced to confront what I'm implicitly teaching them. For example, when a student tries something once and then says, was that it? Did I do it right? And I'm tempted to say, not even close. The problem isn't the ethical considerations in my response or my students' feelings. It's that I, the teacher, need to ask myself, what is leading to this question? Or more specifically, why do my students believe their movement should look like mine? I thought this was really cool. What like a really interesting way to think about and talk about sort of the implicit messages that we send in our teaching is that when a student asks immediately, am I doing this right? The first and easiest answer is like, yes, you are, or no, you aren't. And the second answer, the maybe more important answer that you're kind of pointing at here is like, why was this a question that my student asked? Why is the question, am I doing this right? The first thing that comes to their mind as the question. Like that says a lot about what I'm implicitly teaching them. That they say, am I doing this right? Means several things. It means that they think rightness is something that I, the teacher, like identify for them. They think there's a right way to do the movement, right? There's a whole lot of kind of underlying assumptions in that question. And that I love that you pull it out as like a thing to question about your teaching. If your students are asking you, did I do it right? what am I doing as a teacher that creates an environment for that or like that? And I wanted you
Yeah.
to talk more about that because I think it has maybe something to do with your background or your reflections on like gymnastics or where you've come with your aerial teaching, or like what do your students ask you now, or how do you respond to that question when you get it still, you know?
So I think most movement educators will have gotten that question many times over. Was that it? Did I do it right? Like, is this right? Right and wrong. I don't know if we can completely eliminate that from our vocabulary. But when I say that in the essay, that I'm forced to confront, if they're asking implicitly, does my movement look like what's underneath their questioning is, does my movement look like yours? The answer is always no, but it shouldn't. And I know exactly why they're asking that question. Is because implicitly I've taught them that that's what they should value. They should value looking like me. And that's what I confront. That's what I look at. That's what I go away and work on, because that's not really what I want. Like, I've already got a twin. I don't need someone else to look like me. And like, no one ever can look like you. And I did a story on this last week on Instagram. Like, your movement idiolect is yours. It dies with you. So all the things I've always wanted to delete out of my own movement, my like weird sickled feet sometimes, and my like inability to like just let my feet just do what they're doing in space rather than be either pointed or flexed, or some articulated shape, my hyper musicality. I have this like weird relationship to musicality, and there's loads of stuff in my movement that I'm like, that I don't like. And yet the majority of people would compliment me on my movement quality. And so I've
Mm.
learned how to just like take that compliment, let it land. But I've also like learned that like, oh, I am evolving my idiolect. And if I don't accept the way I move and create movement with that in mind and accept that, then I'm basically preaching we should all look a certain way. We should be all moving towards this standardized template, which is why NLP was so confronting to me at first, because I was like, oh, yeah, I'm doing all of these, check, check, check. I'm doing all of these things wrong. Right. So there's this thing that like, okay, I need to pivot completely and do them right. It's like, no, you need to keep them in mind. You need to keep in mind that when you're teaching implicitly, students are picking up on messages that you don't think. I don't know who said this, but basically the sentence that always comes to mind is, you never actually teach what you set out to teach. Yeah, you might have an idea of what material you're teaching in class, but the lesson that people come away with has everything to do with the social and the embodied dynamics within the class. So I'm learning that more. And remind me of your question.
I didn't so much ask a question as like open a subject, you know. I think maybe one of my questions, yeah. How do you deal with this question when it comes up today? When a student is like, "Oh, did I do that right?" Like, what's your reaction now? You know, what is your current practice for that question?
Yeah. Well, now when they ask it, I straight up ask them a question back. Why are you asking? Why do you care? Why do you? And they're like, what do you mean? And then I have to make sure that they don't feel silly for asking a question, right? But I do push back, and it's the same thing. And I'm sure we'll talk about this more because you talk about demonstration. It's the same thing when they ask for another demonstration. I ask, why? Why do you think you want another demonstration? Why do you keep telling me you're a visual learner? Why do you keep asking to see it again? What is it that you think you're going to get out of one more demonstration? What are you going to look for in this next demo? What are you specifically going to track what my left hand does the whole way? Are you taking in the movement as a whole? I just get really, I don't know, I just push back because I'm like, I just want you to understand your motive for the question. I'm not unwilling to demonstrate. I'm not unwilling to tell you the steps again. I'm not willing to critique if you're asking, did I do it right? I mean, how many times I've just had to like draw the Aussie filter way back in and be like, don't just say not even close, because that's
don't rude. Just say no.
Incredibly rude, but it is the correct response to the question. If their question is, did I do it right? And I'm saying this is how to do it right, then the only answer to that is not yet. Nope, not yet.
Yeah, usually the answer is no. Yeah.
Yeah, usually the answer is no. And if it's yes, you did it right, that's also kind of like a period end to the sentence. There's no moving conversation. There's like no back and forth about, but what if you did it like this? Or did you solve the movement problem that we agreed was the purpose of class? Like, so the conversation matters more to me than the question, but I generally ask a question back, which is a technique I've had to train myself to do.
It's hard. I have two questions that I ask back that have taken me a long time to both develop the question and also build the habit of asking the question back.
Yeah.
Yeah. The habit of asking the question back. One of them is, you go first. You tell me first, right? They'll say, did I do that right? And I'll say, you tell me, right? And then I'll tell you, right? Because then they know that I'm going to tell them whether they did it right or not,
Yeah.
which I will, but I want them to go first, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Love
trying to
that.
recenter like their thing goes first. So you tell me, or what do you think? Or what do you think first? Right? The other response I'll have is, I'm not sure, but did you do it better? Right? So not
Reframe.
yes, you did it right, or no, you didn't do it right. I'm not sure if you did it right or not. Do you think it was better than last time? Right? Because I want to get them away from judging their progress as here's the target, did I hit a bullseye? And towards judging their progress as like I was here and now I'm 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 here and now I'm, like, am I getting closer to the bullseye? So either pulling them into like center your own opinion of this thing or trying to pull them in towards this isn't about getting it right. It's about, are you getting closer to the thing or better to the thing? What I like both these responses. They work really well for me. What I don't like about both these responses is they don't push back quite hard enough on the idea that there is a right way to do it or not.
Mm.
I think when a student asks me if something that they did was right, I don't know that that's the moment I want to go to the mat with them about the idea of whether or not movement can be right or wrong, or whether or not the movement they're doing right now can be right or wrong. If they've asked the question, it reveals to me that they think the movement can be right. And like, is this the right moment? Is this the correct time to be like, wow, your whole brain is broken? Like actually you need to do a full reset on what you think we're doing here.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
find
Is
this
now
to
a
be
good time?
constructive.
It's now a good time for a paradigm shift? Probably
Yeah,
not.
probably not. Yeah.
The other way you could tease it out is like, and I love doing this because I looked up the definition of the word good once. And one of the definitions of the word good is fit for purpose. And that is my favorite definition of the word good because it's just so easy to scale, right? This is a good lamp. It does what a lamp needs to do. It turns on. This is a great lamp. It turns on. It does what a lamp needs to do. And it was crafted by a monk in Shaolin, whatever. This is a exquisite lamp. It turns on. It does and you just can kind of scale things. So the
Yeah.
other thing that you could do is sort of question, what does right mean to you? Like not like esoterically, but like it could be that was safer. But I think if it's important to you that you execute it with straight legs and pointed toes, it could be better. So you can kind
Yeah.
of couch your feedback. I mean, most people are not really, they just want the yes, no answer, but that's something for them to look at as well, that you can kind of slowly coach them towards this idea of like, was that good? That was better than your last turn. And I'm going to tell you why. It was better because you did it again. It was better
Yeah.
than your first go because it was your second go.
Yeah.
There's like, I could get so,
and that was really
philosophically into it.
getting them into more specificity, I think, is something that I do that I didn't realize till you said it. But I do that sometimes. It's kind of like, did I do that right? I'll ask them again, like, do you mean, did I do it with my toes pointed? Is that what you mean to ask? Like, what do you mean to ask by did I do it right? Do you mean to ask, did I do it fast enough? Do you mean to ask, did I do it da-da-da? There's an idea that I think is interesting from motor science here, which I'll just slip in because I like slipping these things in, and then we'll do our last one, called intrinsic knowledge of success. Intrinsic knowledge of success is when you have a movement task that doesn't require any form of feedback for the student to know whether or not they've succeeded. The classic example is throwing and catching a ball, right? Intrinsically, if you have a ball and you're trying to throw it and catch it in the other hand, you don't need me to give you feedback on whether or not you've done that correctly. You know whether or not you've caught the ball. You caught the ball or it landed on the floor. You caught the ball or it, landed over there. You caught the ball or it went off into space. Like, you don't need me to tell you whether or not you've done this correctly. Doing a back handspring over a barrel is another example of like intrinsic knowledge of success. You either get over the barrel and back onto your feet or you don't. And we like, as teachers, we like exercises or things that carry an intrinsic knowledge of success, because then our students don't need us to perform and improve at the skill. they know what the bar is and they have an intrinsic sense of whether or not they've succeeded at it. And can I build drills, build sequences, build a sense inside my student of like, your intrinsic knowledge of success can actually be much broader than you initially suspect it can be. It's not limited to, like, oh, did I straighten my legs and point my toes as I do it? It can be like, oh, did I feel the thing I wanted to feel? Did I flex my feet as I went up? Like, what am I trying to do in this moment? And can I tell for myself whether or not I succeeded at it? That, I
Yeah.
think, is like building a skill of self-assessment and knowledge of success
Yes.
inside students that becomes really valuable as like, I don't want to call it a soft skill because it doesn't feel soft. It feels really solid and important.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you don't have to sort of be behaviorally disciplining or like being like, don't ask that question or don't use the word right or wrong in my class. It's like, no, you can just kind of curate a extra layer and more layers of self understanding as to what they were doing. That's what I like about tasks. And before I had encountered NLP, I was always doing tasks because of that idea of like, if they solve the problem that I told them to solve, like, can you get up without using your left hand? Then they intrinsically know that they did it right, but they're also open to noticing other parts of their solution, right? Maybe they used a hinging action or they inverted or whatever. They can go, oh, but it was uncomfortable. The fabric was not great here because I didn't, shift my weight properly. So they can identify parts of their solution that weren't ideal. And again, that's coming from insight, intrinsic sort of self-reflection. So yeah.
Yeah. Should we do one more and then call it a
Yes, I
night?
just have to tell you, I'm getting like Victoria emergency app notifications that it's like watch and act for the flooding stuff. I don't know what the action would be, but if I do look a little bit distracted, it's just because I'm getting flood warning.
That's so exciting. If like a wave comes in and sweeps
Yeah.
you away, I'll call someone in Australia.
Yeah, well, Mitch is out in the van at the moment, so I think he actually might be stuck somewhere, but he'll be right. He knows what to do in emergencies. Yeah.
All right. Fingers
I
crossed.
wanted to do one more, but I think you just go because I haven't done my second one of yours, have I?
Yes, you doing a second one of mine.
Oh, that's what we're up to?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Same page. Awesome. Lovely.
Yeah.
Okay. So, towards the end of your essay, you state that if our coaching centers on imitation, correction towards an ideal template, and detachment from sensation, then we may be reproducing a philosophy of movement we claim to oppose. And I thought that was a big claim, but in a great way. I agree with the sentence. And I think that probably what practical implementation of like ideas looks like is failing at it, right? It's inherent. We first have to fail at fully implementing our ideas because we're coming up against that friction point of like, this is ideal and this is what works in practice. But what I like about that sentence is that you're saying you're specifically the part about sensation. If we're claiming to teach movement in a way that is actually taking autonomy away from the body and encouraging people to, like, in my gymnastics elite career, encouraging movement that is despite sensation, then we're doing actually the opposite of what we claim. If we're talking about embodied movement coaching and as an educator wanting people to have a felt experience and to develop bodily knowledge, then we really need to encourage sensation. So I just love that sentence because I'm like, yeah, imitation. That's one thing that I think we're trying to move away from, and we're becoming more aware of non-ideal or unstandardizing things, and always correcting towards that ideal movement template. Again, I'm working on that, but the idea of detachment from sensation being something that can somehow heighten performance is deeply in there. It's in my body for sure. So I think encouraging people to have a felt experience is key there.
Well, there's a distinction inside that has become really useful to me, specifically more as I've learned to live with a chronic pain condition. So, if for some reason someone's listening to this as their first exposure to Adam ever, I had a fall when I was in my 20s that led to an injury that kind of led to some pretty intense chronic pain through my 20s and 30s because I wasn't really taking care of myself. And now it's just kind of like, oh, I've settled into being like, oh, yeah, I have a chronic pain thing that goes on and I live with it and it's fine. But one of the things I learned in learning to manage my pain was the distinction between like discomfort and pain and distress. Distress is like a psychological event or a thought event or a felt event. And pain and discomfort are physical sensations, right? So, can I have pain without experiencing distress? How much pain can I have without experiencing distress? And how much is this disassociative versus how much is this useful? You know, like circus does hurt. Circus has uncomfortable moments. Circus has injuries. Circus, when you're learning circus, it's like, oh, this is uncomfortable. And I don't want to be misunderstood as advocating for kind of like we need to connect to the sensations of the body and avoid discomfort. You know, like, no, we don't need to avoid discomfort. We need to acknowledge that discomfort and pain or distress are as important sensationally as other sensations in learning circus, right? And we don't want to force students to be in more discomfort than they want to be in, but we also want to help our students develop a relationship in which discomfort doesn't automatically lead to quitting and discomfort doesn't automatically lead to distress and where discomfort doesn't automatically lead to pushing the discomfort down and thinking you must be doing something correctly. There's a really interesting research piece that it's like in an academic journal. Maybe I'll find it and link it or add it to the script of the thing about someone did kind of an ethnography, a series of interviews about the way that circus artists in particular talk about pain as a way to form identity and community. That pain in circus is like kind of a marker of belonging. If you hurt in a certain way, or if you talk about your pain in a certain way, you are passing a code test on being in the circus community. And in some ways, I think this is super cool. Like intellectually, I'm like, whoa, that's pretty cool because that feels really true to my experience of circus. And B, I'm kind of like, that also sort of feels super broken, right? Like maybe we don't want to be the
Abusive.
community. Yeah, right? Like maybe we don't want to be the community that's known for being like, yeah, like we love hurting all the time, you know?
There
Like
are
me,
other places to safely explore pain.
yeah, like maybe that's not like super cool,
It's not our
bro.
industry.
Right, broski. Um, and so I'm really interested in the relationships between pain and discomfort and distress and frustration and, you know, like how those emotions and sensations live in the body for students. And like, when do we regulate them? When do we say this discomfort is acceptable? When do we say this level of distress is acceptable? And when do we say it's not? And who's in charge of those decisions and how are we teaching our students to make those decisions? I think that all sounds very complicated when I say it that way, like out loud, but like in my practice, that's actually pretty simple. You know, I have a 10-year-old student who's doing a footlock and they're trying to learn a trick in footlock and they say, ow, my foot hurts. And they come down, right? Uh, what do I do? Do I say, oh, if your foot is hurting, you really shouldn't try this trick again? Okay, there's one option, right? Do I say, "Oh, yeah, it's really normal for your foot to hurt. Why don't you take a break and try it again in a few minutes?" Okay, there's another option. What if I say, "How much does your foot hurt on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst pain you can imagine and 1 being like no pain at all? How much does your foot hurt when you're doing this footlock trick?" Right? All of these are different options. Now, I'm not, sometimes I think people do these little lists as like one of those answers was the right one. I use all of those at different
Yeah.
places with different 10-year-olds, right? Um, but every time I encounter a student's frustration or a student's discomfort or a student's pain, I recognize that my next steps, my influence as a coach is reflecting a philosophy of mine, is reflecting beliefs of mine. Whether or not I consider it in the moment, whether or not I think about it beforehand, like my beliefs are being reflected in my response to, ow, this footlock hurts. I don't want to do it again. Or, ow, this footlock hurts. I'm going to do it 5 more times. Or, ow, my foot hurts, but it doesn't matter. Man, if a student ever said that to me, right? Like, no, your response to that is a reflection of your beliefs. And you can either take the moment to be like, are my actions as a teacher aligning with my beliefs? Or you can take the moment to be like, what are the beliefs? Like, I responded in this way. What does that say about what I really believe? Do I
Mm.
really believe that my students should push through pain no matter what? Is that really what I believe? Is that really who I want to be? And that comes back to your sentence about kind of like using the data of your actions to let yourself know what it is you're really believing. I thought that was I think that's the thought from your essay that's really stuck with me since I read it.
Yeah, because then rather than always having to like challenge your actions or change habits all the time or completely shift course because you're getting hyper fixated on this is the right action, this is the wrong action, you're just in a constant self-reflective sort of mode of assessing like, are my choices an example to someone else of what I believe without me having to like preach it. And it's interesting, like what you said in your essay about um, monism and the fact that, like, with circus, particularly, I think the reason I'm obsessed with Ariel as a canvas is because I think different interaction surfaces with the body actually inform, they're a sort of feedback, right? They're a sort of critique. They're a sort of non-verbal commentary on how I'm moving. If I'm moving in a way that's not super controlled, maybe the silks are a little bitey today. If I'm moving in a way that my choices are not autopilot, I'm having to be very considered and stop-starty, then I'm not really flowing and maybe the hoop is starting to kind of irritate me because it's stuck in one spot or I'm not aware of my weight shift. And so the canvas informs the movement is a philosophical concept that is very practical. It's very easy to look at that and go, yeah, that's why I love teaching aerial silks to farmers because it can tell them something about their body they didn't know before. It can teach them about the nature of pain, discomfort, the difference, like you said, between psychological distress versus acceptable discomfort, either in the name of growth or just in the name of, oh, that was a temporary sensation. And the second time I did it, it wasn't uncomfortable. And so it's cool when a student reflects back to you, that hurt my foot. Because like you say, you can then say, good, you noticed. You were mindful enough to notice. That's a big bit of feedback that you're getting from your apparatus. What are we going to do about that? Here's some ways we can
Yeah.
navigate that or use that or avoid it. But yeah, avoiding pain, full stop, just because something hurts, so don't do it. Yeah, that's a interesting, like I didn't experience that obviously in my gymnastics. Like it's interesting watching the Winter Olympics because I'm seeing these interviews with these very emotionally intelligent young men and women doing interviews. And I'm like, wow, that is just light years away from kind of what I embodied and internalized as a gymnast for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think the cool thing that's happening, there was a project that went through Latin America from this guy in Spain, and the project was called Está Pasando, which means it's happening now, And like I do think as I look around at the circus world and at the Olympics and things, I'm like, okay, like the young professional coaches that are working with these people, like the people our age range are like, we are doing it. It is happening. Like
Yeah.
the next generation of movers is taking a totally different approach to movement than the one I was taught in a way that I feel like is really positive. So I do think we're doing it. I do think it is happening. I don't know that it's happening everywhere. I don't know it's happening for everyone, but I do think it's happening in a really exciting way.
Yeah, and we are seeing the manifestation of it. So, like I said before, failure is inherent to this system of applying ideological stuff, right? We are seeing it work out in good ways. We are seeing it not work out in good ways. And I think that's the main thing is that the conversation keeps moving between choice, consequence, what can we change, what can't we change, what's practical, what's not practical. Like it has to keep going because it is a process.
Yeah. Well, let's end on that note. A pleasure as always. Little dance party. I hope that conversation was as interesting to listen to as it was to have. I listened to it as I was editing it, and I was like, wow, there are so many cool things in this that Rach said that I continue to reflect on even now. So if you want to get involved in the conversation, drop us a DM on Instagram. You can contact me through my email. I'm not posting very much these days, but I'm still here and I'm still having fun. If you would like to join my Discord channel, drop me a message about that. It is a private little group of about 30 people where we talk about teaching and philosophy and practical applications and have little monthly inspirations that we throw to each other. So if you're interested in any of that, check me out, check Rach out on her YouTube channel, Aerial Canvas Online, and I will see you next month for more interesting conversations.